Good morning, Jesse.
Good
I'm
morning,
doing
Rolf.
fine.
Good.
How,
Glad you
how are you?
were able to join me for this. So I got your question, and I definitely appreciate that because that's happened to me so many times in my career where you get a reference and you get a brief, and it doesn't necessarily always match, and there's a lot of confusion. And sometimes the client's telling you one thing, and then you hear the reference, and you're like, "Well, that doesn't even sound like what you're saying." So walk me through where you're coming from with that. Did you have a recent experience, or is this just kind of a general question you have?
So I have some experiences with that. I'm doing this now for like 18 months, so not that long. Still consider me as a beginner, but I have some contacts. One is through an A&R company, so the middleman thing, and then I have mm, contacts with like four libraries. And one example was I sent it in a 50 years pizzicato small orchestra thing, and he liked it, but um, didn't react. And I found another library that took it, and then 3 months later he said, "Okay, this is something I would really like, but not exactly this. Let me find some examples." But we were, from my perspective, speaking about 50 years, 60 years small orchestra stuff. And then he sent me some examples, and that was 60 years electronic organ elevator kind of music. So with this very old electronic organs and some Stratocaster guitar like they used to play in the 60s. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I looked for emulations of these organs. I found some and did with cha-cha-cha and bossa nova and all that stuff. And then I sent it to him, and he said, no, organ 60s organ is not at all what I wanted to hear, but the examples were exactly. So I tried to not really copy, but stay very close to the examples, but it was complete different. So he wanted orchestral stuff, but the references were guitar, electronic organ. And so this is not a problem that much when you can are able to communicate with the library, because then I can explain. But given the case, you get a briefing, but you never had a good contact. So you want to appear as a pro who understands what they need. And if a thing like this happens, it's kind of embarrassing and not very good starting point.
Totally
So
understand it, man. And I feel for you there because that's happened to me more times than you realize, where they say, we want this. They give me a reference track. I give them something that I felt the same way is exactly in their line, exactly following a reference guide. And they're like, no, that's not really it. Or we changed our mind. We want something completely different. But they don't tell me that they changed their mind. They just suddenly don't like what I gave them and they want to go in a completely new direction. So you're not, just first of all, you're not alone feeling that
mm,
frustration. I know it can feel embarrassing and just obviously defeating to put all that work into something and have a library say no, even though you felt like, man, I was totally following directions. So what happened here? One thing that I want you to realize is that people who run libraries, sometimes they are musicians, sometimes they are producers. A lot of times they're not. A lot of times they
mm,
have no, very little actual music background. And that's certainly true with a lot of music supervisors. That's certainly true with a lot of clients that have TV shows, movies, commercials that are looking for music, directors of films, for example. And a lot of times they don't have the same language that you and I would have for how to describe music.
yeah.
And even you and I, even though we're both musicians, we would use different language probably to describe the same kind of stuff, right? So this is such a common issue. It's not specific just to sync licensing. Just miscommunications is what humans do probably the best. It's like our superpower. We really know how to miscommunicate very, very well. And I would say kind of touching on something you said there when you said, you want to look like a professional. You want to look like somebody who can take the brief, take the references, and just go do it. I get this question so many times from our members, and there's this kind of hesitation to want to ask for clarification for fear that it makes us look like amateurs. Like, well, I should probably know this stuff. I shouldn't be asking for clarification. I really want to flip that script, especially with you and for everybody, that it's actually a professional move to ask for clarification. Now, let's say this is the first time this has happened, so you didn't know you needed to ask for clarification, because to you, it seemed pretty straightforward. You understood. They gave you the references. They talked about it. You said, okay, I get it. I don't really need any clarification. But the minute you send it to them and they say, no, this is totally not what we wanted, that's when a phone call needs to be, happened. I think not an email at that point. It needs to be, hey, you know what? I appreciate your guys' feedback. You coming to them with this sort of a response. I appreciate your feedback. I'm sorry that this didn't quite nail it for you. I really am ambitious and would love to give you this music. Can we schedule a quick 15, 20-minute phone call so you can really describe to me where I went wrong? Maybe give me some pointers on how to do it better, because I think a phone call is going to be able to clear up maybe some of the confusion. Because what you'll find is probably that they just didn't have the language to directly communicate to you exactly what they wanted. That's really what it came down to. And when you take that sort of, that sort of big person approach to say, you know what, I will reach out and say, I think we should have a communication about this. That's actually what a professional does. A professional doesn't keep going, well, okay, I'll just try it again. I don't want to bother them and ask questions. No, a professional would say, you know what, I'm not wasting my time again. I'm not going to go do this for a couple more weeks, send it to them and have them give me some other feedback that it wasn't the right thing. I value my time. I value their time. I want to be the professional in the room to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be the professional that says there's a miscommunication here. And I'll take ownership in that. Maybe I just misunderstood. And you kind of take that, if you can kind of be that bigger person in that scenario and say, listen, I probably misunderstood what you wanted. Would you mind just getting on the phone with me for a few minutes and talking to me about this? It gives them an opportunity to clarify what they really wanted. So rather than us coming to them and saying, well, you guys sent me these references and you gave me this direction and I gave you exactly what you wanted, so it's your guys' fault. You guys miscommunicated. Rather than coming at them kind of in a defensive mode and attacking them, assuming that maybe it was all on us. Maybe we completely misunderstood exactly what they wanted. And so offering that opportunity for them to clarify themselves is the way to move forward. So I don't know if that's kind of something that you could find useful for yourself in this situation.
Yeah, it's great. It's a good advice to just have a short call or schedule a phone call. Okay, for me as a beginner, we are hesitating. We don't want to spam people and all that. But on the other hand, that was some hours for more or less nothing. Not nothing. I found another library that liked the organ stuff, but could be just for, to just reside on a hard disk and never anything happens. So time is very precious to everybody. Sure. And another thing is with that, sometimes I get listings from an A&R company, and always with references. Sometimes YouTube videos about any music that might be similar to that, but sometimes I get WAV files from a catalog, and I have the impression, although the references are a cohesive, like almost song-like thing, they always want to have something that fits to a typical production music formula, like, so 4 bars intro, 8 bars, another 8 bars, different thing, then a drop, 8 bars, a B part, 8 bars, beat parts with a layer, so until you get to 2 minutes or such. So would you say it is better to stick, if you're in doubt and can't directly communicate, to stick with this kind of production music formula rather than to stick with the references?
This is a great question, and I actually think before we get into that, I think going back into what you said, these are A&R companies, which I'm assuming you don't have to name who it is, but essentially a company where they just send out opportunities, you pay to submit to them or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Problem with that kind of company is this right here. This is why I don't personally recommend those kind of companies in terms of a long-term career trajectory. If you want to get your feet wet, kind of get practice with this stuff, I understand it. But this is exactly why that's not a path to full-time income, is because when this stuff happens and you're like, hey, you sent me like a full song, but I know I need to kind of make this licensable, and you might have these questions, you're one out of 10,000 people that opportunity got sent out to. So are they going to be able to get on the phone with you and say, well, we have a member here who has some questions? Probably not. Like you said, it's probably hard to get a hold of these people to get some clarification, and you're just another number to them, honestly. You're not a person with a name. They don't have your phone number. They don't talk to you. They don't email you directly. They just have a mass mailer, a mass email that they send out. So that's the tricky thing with this. When there's not a personal connection to sort of bridge this gap when there's confusion, that's where you're kind of shooting in the dark, because I couldn't sit here and tell you always go with the sort of, like you said, the standard kind of production music approach where you're constantly building and evolving and creating dynamics, because maybe the placement they want really is they just want a full song. They want it to emulate exactly how this song is formatted. So for me to tell you do this or do that would be very foolish, because every opportunity is going to be unique and there's going to be unique needs for each one. So if you don't have that direct line to whoever's offering you the opportunity, just know that that's your big disadvantage for those kind of companies. So use it to get excited, to build up your catalog, to keep creating music. But I just have to say that you should be shooting towards partnering directly with libraries, so that you could have a personal relationship with somebody offering you these kind of gigs, so that they could give you personalized feedback, get on the phone with you. At the end of the day, this is a people business. People really want to work with people that they love and that they really have a good feeling for. So being just an anonymous number on a mailing list for, all these sync opportunities, I get how it feels easier that way, because it's like I just have to basically sign up for the service and they just send me the opportunities. That's it. But you can see now, hopefully, how you have a big disadvantage when you're going that route, as opposed to, it's a little bit more risky. It's little bit, probably a lot more work to create that full album and go directly pitch to a library and get submitted to them. But I just have to, let you know about that's going to be something that, no matter how long you're in this business doing those kind of opportunities, you're not going to see, I don't think you'll ever see full-time income. So just see it as for what it is. Maybe it's just kind of a training, getting your feet started. Like you said, you're just kind of still new to this. That's great. If it helps you, if it motivates you, it keeps you producing music, then go for it. I'm saying go with whatever works. But as an educator in this and somebody who's done this full-time, I have to be honest to say that is not a full-time path to do this, for full-time income. So.
Yeah, I can second this, because I'm with Sync Academy, like, what is it, maybe 7 months or 8 months. And with this A&R company, I'm for 1.5 years. And when I came to Sync Academy, okay, you encourage us to do full albums with this Sync 60 thing and such. And then I said, okay, why not do a full album? And I sent it out. I searched the internet for companies and I had your list, and it worked. After 2 weeks, I found a company, was taken the album. Recently, I joined forces with Tito and Watson, and we have a little, not company, but we work together on albums, send it out. 2 days later, company said, yes, we want to have it. So it's, to me, it's the results with a way just to go directly to companies is far better. The learning curve is good on both sides. This is a good thing for me, but so I just can say I have 2 albums and 1 song with companies now. That's good for me because I don't do it that long, but only because of your advice. It's just go there, write to them. And so, and the funny thing is, now I have a good relation to a company who is strongly working with this A&R company. But now I have direct access and can react directly. So that is a very good thing. So thank you for your advice and encouragement. It's
That's
very tough.
awesome. I'm glad to hear that. That's what Sync Academy is for. It's for, I'm really glad you got to be able to connect with other producers too. Just, I've seen a few of these little kind of like production pods kind of form in the community. And I think it's a really good thing because it keeps you excited, keeps you motivated. You're kind of tapping in and working with other people. So that's always a really good thing. And the fact that you now can see and feel that difference between directly partnering with a company versus kind of always having this middleman between you and the
Yeah.
opportunities. And yeah, a couple of weeks. Yeah, you put in some work. Obviously, you did the Sync 60. You pitched for a couple of weeks there, but a little bit of that work is really what it takes. Like you just have to do in the work, and I think that's why a lot of those companies do well for the owners of those companies because it kind of is like here's kind of the easier way to do it. You just sort of pitch to these opportunities, but as you can see, if you just sort of do the work, you can get to some much better places. And of course, you're just getting started, so these are your first couple of albums out there. So you have a long, obviously great, exciting journey ahead of you. But now
Yeah.
you can see that it's possible. I think that's what a lot of producers maybe don't realize that that sign up for a lot of these kind of services. Like, well,
Yeah.
they wouldn't. Why would they accept me? I'm just nobody. I'll just go with these companies because they have the relationships. You can see now. I at some point was nobody. I'm still pretty much nobody. You didn't have a reputation in this business, but the product is your music. So if you're coming to them with
Mhm.
high quality products, they're going to take you seriously. It doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, how old you are, how young you are. They don't care about any of that stuff. They really just evaluate you on how licensable and useful your music is. So I'm really excited to hear that, man.
Yeah, that's good. For me, in 2 years, I will be retired. And so I reduced my daily work. I work 3 days a week, and the rest of the week is for music. But in 2 years, so my idea for my plan for my life is just take the next 2 years to prepare for the time when I have 5 days a week time to do music. Maybe is the time for another question?
Absolutely. Absolutely, man.
One thing I'm struggling with is when I started to do this kind of production music, um, I had in my mind it's all about music, but it's not. It's you have to have like, do you say Lego in in the US? Is little play play things you put together like Lego. Do
Labels?
you know Lego? It's for
Oh, Legos.
kids.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
Legos.
it's more like Lego parts to give the editors work to do, and the structure is more important than maybe a musical idea. So when I start, I always have melodies in my mind, and I'm still fighting. I play around, and then I find a melody, and I, I fell in love with that melody. So, and then I work for like 4 hours and find myself having something which has a nice melody, but it's not at all usable for licensing. So, as this is still a thing I want to learn. Okay, and musical idea is important, but then stop early enough thinking about how to evolve this melody and make it nicer and nicer, rather than how can I do something that is licensable. Yeah,
Absolutely. Great question. It is always a balance. It's always finding the middle balance. Like you said, it's not always just the music and it's obviously not just the structure, but it does need to be a combo of both, that you have a beautiful musical direction and a melody and a chord progression. But yeah, it does need to be in a structure that is useful for a TV show, of course. So yeah, finding that middle ground. The fastest and easiest way to figure that out is literally to go find reference tracks. Like that is the
mhm,
only way to figure this out. Because if you're doing this on your own and you don't have a reference guide, you don't have a track that you're kind of like, I'm going to follow that structure, how they put that together, then you're literally like starting a road trip without having a GPS on, and you have no destination. So you're probably just going to be going in circles around your city, and you have
yeah,
no idea where you're going to go. So of course, by the end of a couple hours, you're like, I haven't really gone anywhere, or I've gone somewhere, but I don't know where I am, and I don't know if I've gone exactly where I needed to go, right? So when you
yeah,
have a reference track, let's say you do, like an orchestral piece, and you're
mhm,
you're following not just any track that you like, hey, I want to, I'm going to let's say mimic like a Mozart or a Beethoven piece or something like that. Not that you're just going to go find some track, but literally a track inside of the library that you either currently submit to and work for, or a library that you plan to pitch to, or even just a library that you're like, I don't plan on working with them, but I think they have really high quality music and I want to use those tracks as my reference guides, because those, I want to get my tracks up to that level. So always have a reference track. Sometimes, most times you can't download it from their website, but at least have it up on another screen on your computer. And then I have actually a tutorial in Sync Academy that actually shows you how I break down a reference track. So I actually like make lists, like written lists on my computer about what does the structure look like, how do the instruments sound. I actually like break everything down. And then in my session, before I even start composing, I actually preload everything. So this, I think in the one that I did, it was like an orchestral track. So I'm basically, instrument by instrument, figuring out what do they have, what are the qualities of that. And I'm basically preloading my session with all of the sounds and the instruments that I think I'm going to need for this, with the reverbs, with the delays, with everything that I think is kind of matching and mimicking what this this reference track is doing. And then I start composing. And then as I'm composing, I'm always going back and going, okay, what did they do? How long is their intro? How long did they take to build up to their big epic chorus or B section? What did they do after their chorus? Did they go down? So always going back and listening, and obviously comparing how they mixed it, how their instruments sound, all that kind of stuff, how the transitions worked. You can literally just, use this as your cheat sheet, your blueprint for how to create a licensable track. So doing this process over and over and over again, what you're going to notice is that in the beginning, it's going to be like pulling teeth. It's going to be really hard because, like you said, you've been in this kind of free range, free spirit, just go where the music takes you. And at the end of it, you're like, this is beautiful, but I don't know if it's licensable. So in the beginning, you are going to be kind of putting harnesses on yourself. You're kind of a wild horse, and you're going to be kind of like taming yourself, essentially, to say, stay within these confines, follow along with this track. So in the beginning, it might feel a little bit strange and it might be a brand new experience. But the more you do it, the more that your brain will start to absorb these choices, and it'll become second nature to realize, oh yes, okay, I'm repeating this section again. I think we're kind of repeating it too much. Maybe we need to add a new secondary melody or harmony on top to kind of add, or maybe start adding a little bit of percussion or just something to bring this track forward in some way. And like you said, building those Lego blocks as it moves forward. So the best thing I can do, there's I could sit here for 4 days telling you all the different ways to make licensable music, but the fastest and quickest way for you to learn it yourself, which is really the only way you're going to learn it, is you're going to have to teach yourself, is a reference track. So definitely with the libraries you're working with or the ones you want to work with, go get some tracks that you're like, that sounds like awesome A+ licensable music, and they've accepted it, so I know that they think it's really good too. That's going to be my new North Star. That's what I'm going to be mimicking and emulating, basically. Of course, not copying them and not copying their melodies, but emulating them and understanding exactly how they put that track together. And you're going to learn that stuff the more that you do it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You got it, Ralph. Thank you so much for your time today, man.